The Saints fall short to the Patriots and drop to 1-5 on the season. Let's talk about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Vogel. As always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. If you've injured any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore, Scott Vicknair handles it all. Give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm not going to pull any punches. We're just going to go for it. The Saints lose today in a game that, frankly, they had a lot of chances to either take the lead or send this shit into overtime, whatever you may want to say. They were in this game against a very good Patriots team, a 4-2 Patriots team that is playing their best football of the season, that was coming off a great win over the Buffalo Bills on Sunday night. Saints kept it close in the first half, although the defense was awful in the first half, and then the defense really picked up in the second half, made some stops, kept this game close. But at the end of the day, you either have playmakers or you don't. And while other teams' playmakers shine in the biggest moments, and we'll get to quarterbacks and talk about that in just a second, what do the Saints have? The Saints have Juwan Johnson, who all he does is fuck up in the biggest moments of Saints games. Every single time. We go back to week 1 where he drops a pass that I know it wasn't an easy catch, but they're giving you 3 years, $30 million. You think you should make that catch? Doesn't. All right, fine. We get into today. Critical fumble. And it's one thing to fumble. It's another thing to fumble, and then you're sitting there socializing with the fucking guy who punched the ball out of your hands in the first place. I don't know, just me. If I were Juwan Johnson and I fumbled the football, I don't know if I'm going to be having a friendly conversation with the guy that forced the fumble. I think I'd be a little annoyed. Not him, though, because he doesn't give a fuck, if I'm being quite honest, because the guy's more concerned with his TikToks than he is his touchdowns and his receptions. So you have him, who I think at this point, I don't think he's a bad player, but when he fucks up, it is so miserable. It is so crucial, and it really comes at the worst time. But I expect that from Juwan Johnson. I expect Juwan Johnson to mess up in critical mistakes for the Saints, and I expect him to go quiet like he did today when he had 2 catches for 15 yards, pretty much a no-show. And honestly, it'd be better if he was a no-show, because out of the 2 catches, you fumble one in a critical spot where the Saints are driving down the field, trying to take the lead in the fourth quarter. But enough of Juwan Johnson. I don't want to waste any more breath on that dude, because at this point, he is who he is. Despite the fact that the Saints paid him, and us Saints fans are stuck watching another 2 seasons of this dude, he is who he is. Chris Olave, he's a good football player. He's not like Juwan Johnson. I don't think Juwan Johnson's a good football player. Chris Olave is a good football player. And I want to make this very clear. I'm not going to be disrespectful towards Chris Olave the way I was towards Juwan Johnson, because Juwan Johnson gets on my fucking nerves. Chris Olave is he's a very good football player at times. The problem is the Saints have a decision to make. Are you going to pay him to be a wide receiver 1? Are you going to pay him like those top guys get? Because you sure as shit shouldn't. The reality is, as good as Olave can be at sometimes, he does come up small in certain moments. And I thought today there were multiple opportunities down the field. We're talking about a first half throw that could have been a touchdown. It just hits his fingertips, doesn't bring it in. We're talking about a throw down the field in the second half that he doesn't bring in. Saints, I think, end up settling for a field goal on that drive. So that's potentially another 7 right there that he's stumbling and he's unable to make that catch. And then late in the game, I know it's a high throw from Olave. I know. And again, it's not the on the chest, by the numbers, easy catch to make. But if you're Chris Olave and you're gunning for a big contract and you want to be a wide receiver 1, you make that catch, because it's the NFL. Not every throw coming your way is going to be easy. And yet I feel like when things get complicated for Olave, he doesn't come down with the football. There was a throw also towards the game where he goes up high, he looks like he's bringing it, and then comes back down and ends up losing it. And there were 4 times during this Saints-Patriots game where I felt like Olave had the chance to make a game-breaking play for the New Orleans Saints, and he didn't make it. And again, I think he is a good football player. I genuinely do. But at some point, if the Saints are saying, hey, we're not going to pay him long-term, we're just not. We don't think it just makes sense for the future of our football team. Trade him before the deadline in November. It makes no sense to keep him on this football team at this point. It really doesn't. I'd say trade Juwan. No one's going to want Juwan. But you should consider trading Olave. He's on the 4th year of that rookie deal. It's just time to go. I just think he hasn't gotten that much better. And I think if you're going to pay him $30 million, that would be a massive mistake. Go let him be great somewhere else. I just don't think it's going to happen in New Orleans. And this isn't a reactionary moment to this game. If any of you, those who listen, you probably follow me on Twitter, I'd imagine. How many times do I say that I think Olave is good, but I would trade him? And you got a couple of weeks now. I think the deadline's November 4th. Figure out if you're going to keep this dude or not. Personally, I wouldn't. I would wish him all the best elsewhere. I got no animosity towards Chris Olave. I've been a fan of his ever since the Saints drafted him. But you see it today. There are wide receivers that make great plays. Doesn't seem like he makes those plays. And to me, when you got a contract decision to make, that's what makes it frustrating. And what also complicates matters, the Saints have to evaluate their quarterback situation. They got to find out if Spencer Rattler is the guy. And in the first half of today's game, we had the halftime live stream, and I came out here and I said, I thought Olave was excellent. I thought it was the best half of football that he's played as the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. That's how good I thought he looked. In the second half, there wasn't much offensively, right? But I don't know if it was him as much as this offense doesn't have juice. And it's so hard to evaluate this spot right now when the Saints don't have a dominant wide receiver who's a possession guy, when the Saints don't have a playmaker at the tight end spot, when the Saints don't have a lethal running back room. I think Alvin's fine. I think Kendrick's fine, but they don't have that game-changing back. Like you'll go watch other games and you'll see a Jonathan Taylor rip off a huge run. The Saints don't have that right now. So outside of great offensive tackles who have promising futures, which huge plus, love Fuaga, love Kelvin Banks, the Saints don't have those weapons that just make life easier for the quarterback. And I thought about it today because when Rattler threw that pass high to Olave, the broadcast was like making excuses for Olave and saying, oh, the throw's inaccurate. Like, it wasn't accurate, but you know what? Not every throw that a quarterback's going to make is going to be perfect, and he's going to need some help. And unfortunately, I don't think this quarterback is getting that help from the complementary pieces around him, and it just makes things even more complicated when you're trying to evaluate him. And that's why we finish games as Saints fans. They end up losing more than most of them, to be quite honest. And everyone goes, well, you know what? He's not the problem, but he's not the solution. I don't know. Look, I know he's not Drake May, right? Because honestly, I don't think the Patriots have great weapons. I think Drake May is a special talent. But you look around elsewhere in the league, and I look at Caleb Williams, and he's got DJ Moore, and he's got Rome Odunze, and he's got Luther Burden, and he's got Cole Kmet, and he got Colston Loveland. And you just see them throwing weapon after weapon after weapon at these young quarterbacks, and things look great. So I don't know. It's confusing. It's one of those situations where I still don't have my full assessment of who Spencer Rattler is and who he isn't yet. But it's tough to make. It's frankly tough to make when you talk about this offensive supporting cast and who's there. So my final thoughts on the offense before I switch to the defense and then turn it over to you guys with your comments and thoughts is Juwan is a mess. And I think Olave is good enough that the Saints can trade him and get good value and use that for next year's draft. And that is another reason why I would trade Olave. You're not going to pay him anyway. You could get a pretty good draft pick in return. And I think at the end of the day, do you think he's part of your future? I would say no. Makes all the more sense to get rid of him. So that's where I'm at with the offense today. Obviously, you guys put in your thoughts, and I'll get to them in just a sec. Let me get to the defense first before I do that. Defensively, I was ready to talk about how miserable they are. Back end was a mess in the first half, getting no pass rush. Second half was much better. Now, look, I think there's two ways to look at it. I think that this Saints defense is lacking talent, and I also think that Brandon Staley deserves a little bit of credit for the last 2 weeks, the halftime adjustments that his team has made. So in today's game, the Saints gave up 22 at the half. They look like a mess. In the second half, they gave up 3 points. In the Giants game, they gave up 14 points in the first half. Second half, they gave up 0 points. If I go back to that 49ers game, Saints gave up 16 points in the first half, gave up 10 in the second half. Not amazing like the other half times, but still pretty good adjustment. Week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals, the Saints gave up 17 points in the first half, gave up 3 in the second half. So there's a lot of talk about whether or not Brandon Staley's the guy. And I don't know yet because we're 6 games in. We got a lot of time to figure out whether or not Brandon Staley should be back for next season. But what I will say is a sign of a pretty decent coordinator, though, is if they are making those halftime adjustments. I actually think he is, personally. I think you're seeing the defense learn from their mistakes in the second half, but they don't have the juice at the defensive line. And there's a lot of moments today where I feel like the Saints could have made that play. They were a second late, and you need to make that play because the back end's not good enough. Kool-Aid McKinstry today was bad Kool-Aid McKinstry. We saw good Kool-Aid McKinstry last week. We saw the bad version this week. Quincy Riley is getting targeted like there's no tomorrow, which is as to be expected. He's a rookie. Teams are going to go after him. It's probably in the scouting report. And today, Jonas Sanker had a bad game. He had 2 excellent games back-to-back today, a bad game. But you got a young secondary. This is what's going to happen. So where I'm at defensively is, I know there's a lot of energy towards Brandon Staley, and a lot of it is mostly negative. I would just tell you guys, pay attention to the halftime adjustments they've been making and see if they can add more talent before we start talking about whether or not this team should make a defensive coordinator change. Because right now, this defense does not have enough juice, and I do think they need more. So, we'll see how it progresses. But right now, not a great sign there. Now, last thing before I get to you guys, no one really cares at this point because the Saints lost the game. We'll see if it carries over into week 7. But Blake Grupe actually had a good game today. And I know that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. No one really cares about that. But he went 4-4 today. And for a guy who has missed 10 for 15, so he's missed 5 kicks already this year coming into this game, to go 4-for-4, hopefully it's a confidence boost. We'll see. Time will tell. But this was his best game of the season so far, without a doubt. So we're trying to be positive. I guess that's what I can say to be positive. So let's get into all your comments and thoughts, guys, here on the Straight Up Saints podcast. We're going to get into our fan Q&A presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Going to start off with E with a super chat. Thank you so much for the support. E says 90% of the defense and Juwan Johnson should be made available for trade. Yeah, look, no one's going to trade for Juwan. That's just the reality. The contract isn't great. The player isn't great. Defensively, I would not be surprised if Carl Granderson gets traded, though. His name keeps getting mentioned a lot, and a lot of teams are always in the market for pass rushers. So I think that that's a possibility there for sure. So that's kind of where I'm at. Leroy with another super chat. Thank you for the support, Leroy. I actually got 2, so we'll get to both after. What more does Rattler have to do? Are we talking about winning the starting job or winning the game? Because, I guess, I don't know if they both go hand in hand, but look, I thought Rattler was fine today. I know a lot of people are going to say, didn't make the winning plays. Look, man, it's tough to sustain drives when your wide receivers aren't catching the football. And I think that's where I get really frustrated with the Olave situation is a couple plays earlier, Rattler throws a ball that's pretty low. Brandon Cooks, who's like 75 years old, comes up with the tough catch. And shit's not going to be easy when you're a wide receiver. There's going to be some plays where you got to put the quarterback on your back and you got to help them out and do them a favor. Brandon Cooks did that. A couple plays later, Olave doesn't. So I don't know. I'm at the point with Rattler where I think he can be a starting quarterback. He clearly is one at the moment. I think he's definitely one of 32. The question is, how good can he be? And the problem is, I just don't know if he's going to get that help from the playmakers. And I don't think he's that type of runner like, all right, so we saw Thursday night, Jackson Dart uses his legs an awful lot. Rattler's not that type of guy. He's mobile, but he's not going to be that type of quarterback where he wants to get to his legs and run as much as a guy like Jackson Dart does. But I don't know. I think Rattler's a solid quarterback. It's tough for a day like today to really grade where he is amongst the 32 and what he can be. Because I thought they had their opportunities. And how many throws today do you feel like him and Olave were either a step too late or Olave didn't make the play? And that could swing the game. I talked about it before. There was like 2 plays that could have been touchdown passes to Olave. If those get made, you win this one. So it's tough to say, but I understand, Leroy. I'm with you. Second comment that you made, smiling and laughing after loss, loser mentality. Was that in regards to Juwan? I didn't see if he smiled after. I know he smiled after he fucking fumbled. So, that was great to see, but it definitely does feel like that. Ed says Saints should be 3-3. Red zone offense continues to be asshole. Olave shaking my head. Kool-Aid shaking my head. Chase almost got a sack, shaking my head. And Alvin slowing down. Look, let's go through them. Red zone offense has been an absolute joke. No question about that. Olave was not good today. I don't care what the stats say. He did not make the big plays that needed to be made. Kool-Aid did not make any plays, to be frank. I was going to say didn't make the plays that need to be made. Didn't make any plays, period. And Chase is who he is. He's going to get pressure, but he doesn't make the big play. And again, I think Chase Young is a solid football player. And this is his first game back, so I'm going to cut him a little bit of slack. But it does feel like more of what we saw last year, where it's Chase almost got the sack Young. And that's where we are. And as for Alvin, look, I think we're starting to see Father Time catch up a little bit with number 41, which, I always thought never was going to happen, but that's how it seems. Miss Panenko with the super chat says, build around Rattler and clean house. It's time. By clean house, what do we mean? Like clean the roster out? Let me know in the comments. You don't have to super chat. Just let me know in the comments and I'll pull that one up later. But I guess that's what you mean. I think like offensively right now, they need help in every direction. They need tight end help. They need wide receiver help. So, that could be part of it. If you mean clean house, like management, I don't think that's going to happen, even though I know some fans probably want that. As for Rattler, it's tough to say. Look, I'd love to see what he could do with better weapons. And I think sometimes I love when teams do build around their young quarterback because you get an answer, right? Like if the Bears don't make it work with Caleb Williams, it won't be for the lack of trying. They got him Ben Johnson, who was the hot shot coordinator. They got him Rome Odunze in a first-round pick. They got him another weapon in Colston Loveland, first-round pick this year. They have him DJ Moore. They used a day 2 pick on Luther Burden. So, like, it isn't for the lack of trying, Ed says Rattler's not the issue. Small receivers, what we get Vele for. Kendre needs more touches, secondary, especially corners. Yeah, so let's get into the 2 offensive ones that you mentioned, Ed, because I love those comments. I don't understand. When Vele's on the field, it feels like he makes a big play, but it doesn't seem like they use him enough. And that to me is weird. You traded for him. You gave up two draft picks for Vele. You are going to be drafting very high this year. If you're going to be giving up those draft picks, you better have a game plan for this guy and how you're going to utilize him. And it seems like the Saints aren't there yet, and I don't know why. So Vele definitely needs more touches. And Kendre, obviously, I think at some point the Saints are going to have to be like, hey, Alvin, we love you. It's got to go 50-50 here. And honestly, it's different. When Kendre runs, he's just better right now. And this isn't a knock on Alvin. Alvin's older. Kendre's younger. Kendre's running like a dude who's hungry right now. And I would love to see him get a little bit more usage. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now with this Saints running, backfield and in general with this running back room. Leroy with another super chat says, let Michael Thomas walk with no true replacement. Yeah, I mean, look, that was always going to be a concern, not having a possession receiver. And we kind of see that right now. So, we'll see if they can figure that out next offseason. It's not going to be figured out right now in the moment. So that's definitely a problem. So let's get into other comments you guys have. Obviously, you guys are more than welcome to get super chats up, and we'll obviously prioritize those. But let's get to what you guys have to say. Chuck says, Juwan Johnson will be the death of me. Miss Panenko says, Juwan Johnson and Chris Olave need to be off the team by tomorrow morning. I don't think that's going to happen. Jediah says, Kool-Aid simply not good, at least right now. Seems every time he's targeted, it's caught, and often for a crucial play. I think that's fair, man. I don't think we're seeing an awful lot from Kool-Aid right now when it comes to being consistent, at least. It was great last week. This week, not so much. Manuel says, secondary was absolutely horrendous. Olave has dropped too many passes this season for my liking, and Juwan Johnson getting paid too much money to be fumbling in big moments and dropping passes this season. I don't disagree with you. Don't disagree with you at all. Jediah says, watch Juwan randomly have 2 touchdowns next week, and that's supposed to make everything okay. Look, I'm going to be honest. If he has 2 touchdowns next week, I'm not going to say that makes everything okay, but at least you start to feel a little bit better about it. Let's be honest about Juwan Johnson, guys. He is trending in the wrong direction. All right, Juwan Johnson, let's go by yardage. 76 yards in the first week of the season, 49 yards in the touchdown in the next week, 51 yards in week 3. Since then, he's got 3 catches for 28 yards, 2 catches for 17 yards, 2 catches for 15 yards and a fumble. What the fuck is that type of production for a guy that's getting $30 million a year? I mean, not $30 million a year. God bless if you got that. $30 million over 3 years. So, I'll take the 2 touchdowns like you mentioned. Take it in a heartbeat if that happens. Got another super chat from Leroy. Thank you for the support. Says, if you were Mickey, what would you do to the roster? I'm trading Chris Olave because, like I mentioned, I just don't see why he would be part of this future at $30 million a year. At least that's what the current market is for wide receivers. I think you can get a day 2 pick for Olave, which is more incentive to trade him. You could use that day 2 pick next year for a plethora of positional needs for the Saints team. And let's be honest, guys, that's how the Saints, if they're going to get back to being like a relevant team, they need to have a killer draft. This draft so far is actually pretty good, right? Kelvin Banks looks like a superstar. Quincy Riley's not playing well, but he's out there. Jonas Sanker does look good. So you already got 3 guys that have been playing. We'll see what happens with Shuck if he even plays. And Stutzman could be a possible starting linebacker at some point. We'll see what happens there. But at least you hit on some picks already there, and you feel good about that. You're another draft away. So I trade Olave, get a day 2 pick. I would see what the offers are for Carl Granderson. If they're good, then I would probably move Granderson because I don't think he's part of the future anyway. If not, I keep him, though. I'm not just trading Carl Granderson just to trade him. You got to get something good in return. And look, maybe I'm being naive. You're getting at minimum a 4th-round pick for Carl Granderson. I think you might be able to get better from a team that's desperate for a pass rusher. So I'd probably move Granderson if I could. That might be it for now. I'd see what the market is for Shaheed, but I might just keep Shaheed if I'm the Saints. Hail Mendoza with a super chat. Thank you for the support. Says we saw vintage Chase almost a sack Young performance today. If we're not sellers at the deadline, then this franchise is doomed. Reuben Bain Jr. 2026. Well, they definitely need pass rush help, so I would love if they get Bain. I think they're going to be sellers at the deadline. I think, honestly, guys, I don't have this sourced. I'm just trying to. I've been in media for like 8 years now. I'm just trying to go off like how things usually start. There's so much noise surrounding the Saints right now in the trade deadline that I would not be surprised within the next like 3-4 days they make a trade. We heard a little bit from Adam Schefter. We heard a little bit from Ian Rappaport. We heard a little bit from Nick Underhill. We heard a little bit from Jeremy Fowler. When all these guys start mentioning the Saints and all of them start mentioning potential names that could be on the move, I think something's going to happen. So I think the Saints are going to be sellers. How many guys do they trade is the question, but do I expect them to trade at least one of their like bigger names? Absolutely. I definitely think that's going to happen. Xavier says, only bright spot is how Rattler played, honestly. So bright spots for today, I thought Rattler played well. What else I got in my notes? I thought Grupe played well. I thought Pete Werner was okay. And I thought Brian Brzee made some decent plays. Other than that, in the run game. And the run defense for the Saints. Run defense was very good. Other than those things, hard to get really excited. D23 says, I don't want Olave or Johnson on this team anymore. Rattler made all the plays to win twice, and those two messed it up. It's fair enough. Chase almost got there. Young has returned, Half-Life says. Jonah says, cut Juwan Johnson tomorrow. Don't disagree with you, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Jonah also says, why didn't we draft a receiver? Wish I knew. Look, I will say the Saints wanted to draft Tet McMillan. They wanted to draft Tet McMillan, according to a lot of reports. And the minute the Panthers took him at 8, they pivoted to Banks at 9. Frankly, I'm okay with that trade-off. I think Banks is already a fucking star. And now McMillan's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Tet McMillan's awesome. But look, they wanted receivers. The Saints got to figure out who the leak is in the building, though. There was 2 to 3 different rounds where it seemed like they were going to get themselves a wide receiver, and they ended up having someone jump the gun on them. So, definitely some frustration. Next year, they got to draft one, though. There's no question about it. Robert says, Saints desperately need difference makers. We already had the guys that'll piss down their legs in big moments. Nobody step up and make a play when it matters on either side of the ball. 12 ain't it. Don't disagree. Jerry G says, I got no words right now. Sorry, Jerry. You're usually optimistic as hell. Jonah says, thought Rattler played well, but Olave and Johnson let him down. Secondary was complete ass cheeks. Yeah. Can't disagree on the ass cheeks part. That secondary was getting beat by wide receiver room that outside of Diggs is not that talented. If I'm being fair or kind about it, I said. Japanese Hercu says we cannot lose next week against the Bears. We absolutely have to get revenge on Dennis Allen, one of the architects of the mess we're in currently. I would love that, man. If you tell me the Saints win next week, but then they lost this one, I guess I'll take it. You guys know me. I am a Dennis Allen hater with a capital H, and I'd love to see the Saints beat the Bears. I actually think they could, to be quite honest. I think Chicago's so up and down that it's tough to get a great read on them. I mean, yeah, they're coming off two straight wins, barely beat the Raiders, though, and the Raiders been god-awful. We'll see how they play Monday night against the Commanders, but yeah, I would love that. I love for the Saints to get a win and Kendra Miller to have 2 touchdowns because we know there's some beef there between him and Dennis Allen for sure. Bad Juju says our first two picks need to be a pass rusher and a receiver. I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. Honestly, those are probably the 2 biggest needs right now. My biggest takeaway from today was that I thought that this team lacked juice at those spots. So definitely want to see that get better for sure in those categories. Quincy Riley let their receivers run past him on 2 or 3 straight deep attempts and got really lucky the last one wasn't caught or had a PI call. Yeah, that's fair. Quincy got absolutely torched today. Absolutely torched. Also, I gotta start getting better at going through these comments. You guys are bringing it today. So let me get through ones here. Jerry G saying, trade Jawan's ass. iComedy saying, let the tankathon commence, maybe winning just one of the next 4 games. Yeah, let me look up the schedule real quick. I'll try to be quick on this. I know I said I got to get better at going through these comments, but you got Bears next, obviously, then Bucks, Rams, Panthers. Yeah, you probably one win. Probably one win. Maybe two at best. I think you lose the Rams game, probably lose the Bucks game. We'll see what happens with Bears, and we'll see what happens with the Panthers. Great win for the Panthers today, beating the Cowboys on a game-winning field goal. It's really the back half of the Saints schedule that's a little bit easier. Dolphins, Panthers, Jets, Titans. That's where it's a little bit more manageable. Pace says Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, Blake Grupe are some of the worst players I've ever seen. What the fuck did Grupe do today? I know I'm a Grupe apologist today, but dude was 4 for 4. 4 for 4 at a 54-yarder, I believe it was. I thought Grupe was fine. If we're being quite honest, Grupe not being asked today is one of the few reasons they were still in this game. So, I don't know. Look, I get the frustration with Grupe. I just don't think today's the day to rip the guy. If anything, I actually think Grupe showed a little bit something today. Saints coaching staff called him out. They said, he's running out of time, and the operation's fine. It's him. He's the reason that they're having these misses. And so for Grupe to come out and do that, I thought that's pretty impressive. So, I just got to keep it up. That's where I'm at. Hakeem says Kool-Aid ain't cornerback 1, Johnson ain't tight end 1, and Olave ain't wide receiver 1. But people are going to say it's Rattler's fault they lost again, though. Look, we could get into, the pros and cons of Rattler, but if you're saying today, they lost because quarterback, I'd probably not going to talk football with you, I guess. Wesley says, I don't want to hear any Rattler slander. I don't know what else he can do. Brian said Olave, Johnson, Werner got to go. I thought Werner was fine today. I mean, my rewatch will probably give me a better idea, but I thought he was fine, Sean says, Kellen Moore doesn't have the balls to bench anyone. Well, who's he going to bench? They're not going to bench Juwan anyway. They paid the dude $10 million a year. Olave, I look, maybe I'm wrong. I think they're going to trade him. I think Olave is going to get traded. So we'll see. But, I don't know who else are we going to bench in this situation? I guess that's my question. They're clearly going with a youth movement right now. That's why guys like Quincy Riley are playing. So tough to say who will get benched personally. The fact that Juwan was laughing and smiling with the Patriots player after he fumbles says everything about who he is. Honestly, man, I don't think you're wrong. I really don't think you're wrong. Hate to say it, but Chris needs to be traded. I need to be traded? No, kidding. Yeah, look, I think he's going to go. I think he's going to go for sure. I think that at this point, it's very easy to just cut bait. He's a good player. He's not a great player. He wants to get paid. I think a team that is in contention that needs some wide receiver help, why wouldn't they go after him? I look around the league right now. If you're the Steelers, would you go after him? If you're the Bills, would you add him to your team? Fuck it. If you're the Patriots, man, the Patriots are 4-2, playing really good football. Are they going to want to make a playoff push with Demario Douglas and Mac Hollins vying for their number 3 spot? Even Kayshawn, I know everyone's an LSU fan, and I thought Kayshawn was excellent today, but Olave's a better player. I know the stats today won't show, but Olave's a better player. So, even a team like New England, I think there'd be suitors for Olave. So all the more reason to go out there and get rid of him. And, this comment I don't know if this would be the trade, but, another reason to get rid of Olave, I think you force Vele onto the field. I want to see what the hell they can do with him. You traded for him. Let's see what Kellen Moore can make happen. And at this point, they're not even using Olave to his full capacity anyway. And I don't know if it's because of the concussions or whatnot, but, I think how much is the offense going to change when he leaves? It will hurt a little bit, but I don't think that this Saints team is going to be, it wasn't going to be make or break with Olave anyway. They're 1-5, so I would part ways. Could we get a 2 or 3 for Olave? I think they'd get a day 2 pick. So yeah, my guess right now would be a 3rd round pick, but it's possible. Maybe you get a really desperate team. You need a really strong market to get a 2nd rounder for him. I think you get a 3rd rounder for Olave. And maybe I'm being naive, but that's where I'm at. Unless Olave is willing to take a team-friendly deal, we can draft a good wide receiver 1. I mean, even if he was taking a team-friendly deal, I think I would get rid of Olave regardless, even if that was the case. D23 says the announcers constantly talk up Alante, and honestly, all I ever see is him get beat unless he's rushing the passer. So it was kind of swept under the rug, but on Saturday, I believe it was, the ESPN insiders, I think it's Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano, they usually release some reports of what they're hearing, what's going on around the league. It sometimes gets swept under the rug because it's behind a paywall, but they talked about the Saints. They said the Saints and Alante Taylor are talking about an extension, and they said it could look similar to what Diamador Lenore from the 49ers got. And all I can say about that is if the Saints give a 5-year, $88 million extension to Alontae Taylor, I'm going to pull out whatever remaining hair I have in my head, and it's not that much at this point in my life. I'm going to pull it out because even though Alontae is a solid football player, in no way do I believe Olave is the type of guy that deserves, and I don't want to say deserves, but I don't know if his play has warranted that type of deal so far. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Pat's wide receivers were making great catches. They were. They were. I mean, the secondary also was ass today, but they were making good catches. No, I'm not going to take that away from them at all, you know? Supporting cast around Rattler has not stepped up at all. I think that's fair. Grant says, I'm so done with this team, bro. Rattler played very well. Olave lost this game with some help by Juwan Johnson. Sean says May has weapons. I so disagree. I so disagree on that. I'm not, this is not going to be a quarterback debate right now, but there's no fucking way you guys can look at the Patriots wide receiver room and say like they're dangerous. The Saints defense was bad today. You are not going into battle in the AFC with Booty and Pop Douglas and Mac Hollins. And I know Diggs had a bad game today. He was good last week, but you know, Diggs, who's in the later stages of his career, I mean, the guy's going to be 32 in a month. That's their number one wide receiver. You can't tell me that they have weapons. And I think that's why I was so frustrated with today's performance. I thought we'd see a little bit more out of this Saints defense, especially against, a Patriots offense that I think personally is lacking juice. So Paul says May made the plays when it counted. Rattler didn't. Yes and no. He absolutely did. And I'm not taking anything away from Drake May. I actually think Drake May, got to start having some conversations about where he ranks in the NFL. I mean, he's having a fantastic season. And at this point, the throws he's making they're just special. He's got 10 touchdowns, 2 picks this year. Pats are 4-2, 3-game win streak. I think he's balling. I think at this point, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback by the end of the year. That's how well I think he's playing. He did make the plays. There's no doubt about that. I also think it's tough to say because there were plays to be had and they were dropped. So May's the better quarterback. If that's the question, there's the answer. May's better than Rattler. I don't think there's a debate about that. But I think you also need your supporting cast to step up. Patriots supporting cast did their job. Cannot say that the Saints supporting cast did that job. But I just want to make it clear. May is the better quarterback. He's a better athlete. He's that guy. And I think at some point he'll probably get a little bit more from the national media. I don't know when, but he is definitely playing himself into that top 10 conversation, Stop blaming Olave. No other wide receivers did nothing. Okay, see, is this a fucking charity now? I'm not trying to be rude. Olave is a professional football player. He is vying for a contract that if in today's market, so Garrett Wilson got a little over $30 million a year. If you're Olave, that's probably what you were gunning for coming into this season. He's gunning for that type of contract. He is going to get paid by someone. How in the world are we not supposed to get on him when he's not making plays that wide receivers who get $30 million a year make? Because if that's the case, then you know what, guys? And I can't get on Juwan Johnson's case. All right, he fumbled. Big whoop. It's not about being anti-Olave. It's not about, just only getting on his ass. The reality is, in the critical moments of today's game, Rattler threw the ball to Olave. Did any of those passes come down? No. Didn't come down on 3rd and 17. Didn't come down on the long throw down the sideline in the second half. Didn't come down on the final drive for the Saints in the first half. And on the last drive of the Saints, hit him in the fucking hands. I know it was high, and he didn't catch the football. So at some point, guys, either we have to admit Olave's not that fucking good, or if you think he's that good, which I know a lot of Saints fans think, we have to get on his ass when he doesn't make the plays. And I know I'm triggered over that right now, but that's the truth of the matter. If we're going to sit here and say, oh, we're not blaming other players aren't as good as Olave. So yeah, my expectations for a Chris Olave are higher than they are for Rashid Shaheed. They're higher than they are for Vele. They're higher than they are for Brandon Cooks. That's the reality. If we're going to put the kid gloves on and say that, oh, we're not going to blame Olave, then fuck it. Then he's not that good. Then he's just not that good then. He's not even a wide receiver 2 then if we're going to be that kind with him. So that's where I'm at. And I say this because this is a dude who had 1,000-yard seasons back-to-back to start his career. This is a guy that prior to all the concussions seemed well on his way to getting a contract. Make the fucking catch. It's hitting you in the hands. I know it's not a perfect throw. That's the reality. So I'm over this Olave experience. I think he's a good football player. I think the Saints should move on from him. I think both parties would benefit. And I want to make it clear. I'm saying that shit right now. The Saints trade Chris Olave. I'm going to wish him all the best. I want Chris Olave to be good. I loved him back in college. Loved that the Saints drafted him. It's okay to just say he's not making plays right now. I don't know why we have to defend certain players. And I don't know if it is mental. Maybe it is. I don't know if it's just him dropping the football. I really don't. The weird thing is he's dropping in spots where he's not going to get leveled. I'd understand if there's that aspect of the poor guy's taking a lot of hits because Derek Carr threw God knows how many hospital balls to him over the last 2 years. But they're hitting him in the hands in spots where he's just going to go down to the turf. He's not going to get absolutely lit up, but he's dropping the football. Wesley says Kool-Aid will be a good cornerback 2, maybe even low-end cornerback 1, but he still needs time. I don't know. I love the optimism, man. I love the optimism for sure. AK isn't getting touches. He's not slowing down. Look at the Niners game. He had 20-plus touches and went for 99 yards. I think he's slowing down. Again, it doesn't mean he's a bad football player, but since the Niners game, Alvin's got 2.3 yards a carry, 4.7, which is very good. That was against the Bills, worst run defense in football. 3.4 yards per carry, 3.1 yards per carry. 31 yards against the Patriots, 27 yards against the Giants, 42 yards against the Seahawks. I love Alvin. He's literally one of my favorites all time, but I just don't understand why we just can't be honest. I think they got to go to 50-50 with him and Kendrick. Kendrick's just running harder right now. I think you see it, Spencer Hero says, if Olave made all of his catches, we would have won. And I'm not lying. Possibly. Ed says, at least we're not the Jets, and we better beat the Jets. They better beat the Jets at this rate. Jets look like an utter shit show right now. That's for sure. Just want the guys not producing to go. Olave, Juwan, Young, they aren't producing. Some of the vets might have to be sat for younger players to develop. I mean, not those vets, though. Olave, you could trade because I think you could get value back for Olave. Juwan, they're not sitting. They paid him. Young, they're not sitting. They paid him. Also, Chase Young's better than what they have on the bench. So it's not like they have a young pass rusher that's being held back by the coaching staff right now. They don't have that. Roscoe says, I love when the Aints lose. Well, Roscoe, I got good news for you. Probably a lot more losses coming, so it's good for you guys. Tom Travis says, you take Olave out of the offense, Saints won't win shit. What the fuck are they winning now? They're 1-5. They're 1-5. What are they winning now? Honestly. And let's be real, the one game that they won, you didn't watch the Giants game and go, oh, they won because of Chris Olave. They won because of 5 turnovers on the defense and an 87-yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed. So, again, Olave's good. I think if he goes to a team where he could be their wide receiver 2, he'll really, really thrive. But I don't think the Saints are going to trade Olave and be like, oh, now we suck. They suck right now. That's just the reality, man. Let's keep it rolling here. Let's see what else we got here. Nobody seems to think any of this is on Kellen Moore. What are we blaming Kellen Moore for today, to be honest, though? That's my question. Do we want him to just go for it on 4th downs then and stop kicking field goals? If that's what you guys want, that's fine. That what else are we going to blame about, though? They had opportunities to win this game. Juwan Johnson fumbles. They had another drive after the defense forces a stop. The drop on that, again, high throw from Rattler was not a good throw, but you expect your wide receiver 1 to come down with it. Doesn't. What is Kellen Moore supposed to do? Is he supposed to go out there and cover, Kayshon Boutte over there on the left sideline? I guess that's my question, man. So that's just where we are. Sean Hussein says Juwan is a failed wide receiver. Why did we pay him? I don't know. And they got him for 2 more years. So, get ready for that. 2 more years of Juwan Johnson. That's just where we're at. One Smoke says dream scenarios to draft sellers. Dude makes the first man miss every time. He's a playmaker, would look better with NFL talent. It's possible. I do think Lenoris is awesome. So we'll see. I think where I'm at with the quarterback draft situation, especially because a lot of quarterbacks just haven't played that well this year. The quarterbacks that have played well are not the ones that I anticipated going into the year. Everyone was looking at Nuss and everyone was looking at Arch and Drew Aller and a bunch of other guys. And, you go into, week 8 next week of the season. And the quarterbacks that have impressed me the most are Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson. Sellers obviously still has impressed me. Dante Moore, although he was bad yesterday. that's kind of what happened. John Deere, although John Deere was bad yesterday off that hand injury. So quarterback class for this year is not looking as exciting as it did, a couple months ago. That's just kind of where we're at. Chuck says, dude, the pass hit him in the hand. Still, every pass isn't perfect. Look, you got to help out your quarterback sometimes, man. It's not always going to hit you in the numbers. It's Bear Baby says, Rattler getting some revenge over Williams would also be dope. Yep, that's a good point. Didn't really think about that. Although I'm sure that I could be wrong. There's probably no animosity between him and Caleb. At the end of the day, Rattler was struggling at Oklahoma. And, after that first year, things were kind of going south. And look, it is where it is. One guy ended up becoming the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, another one was a 5th rounder. They're both starting NFL quarterbacks. And, let the best man win next week when they play the Bears for sure. Xavier says Olave and Young both have too many almost. Like I've never seen so many possibly impossibles before in my life. JC says Rattler scored 0 touchdowns and wasn't even on the field for the only touchdown scored by the team. He had another 200-ish yard, no risk losing performance with an offense that can't break 20 points. I think if we're going to go look at touchdown passes, if we're going to go off that metric, it's going to be tough. Because I think you look around the league, sometimes you'll see great quarterback play, and you're not going to see a ton of touchdown passes in that game. Now, do I think Rattler was great today? No. Do I think he was great in the first half? I do, and I do think the second half, obviously, offense was stalling, didn't push the ball downfield enough, which obviously is frustrating. But I definitely think that this is a team that right now is absolutely not just because of the quarterback as for why they're struggling. So that's just kind of where we're at. I think Galante needs to be moved to like an outside backer or something. He's too aggressive of a tackler and too poor of a coverage guy to be a true corner inside or outside at this point. I don't know. I will say about Galante, I think the one guy who really, really understood him well and I thought coached him really well at times is Dennis Allen. And obviously I've shat on Dennis Allen so many times on this podcast, but I really, really think that Dennis Allen just really used him as a playmaker in terms of just put him all over the field, get him close to the line of scrimmage, and go from there. So don't forget to keep giving Mickey Loomis his credit for this great roster. I don't know. I don't know what Mickey anymore, man. That's why I try not to get excited about the draft, because like Mickey's the dude who's going to be making the picks. It's just brutal. What I absolutely hate about the fumble is that Juwan went down. It's a first and we move the chains. Why the fuck is he jumping around trying to go viral on TikTok or something, man? I don't know. Yeah, I think he is a TikTok star though, right? Either him or his wife. I don't know. Can you please address how anytime it's 3rd and 10, it's a guaranteed first down? We can never get off the field on 3rd and long. Yeah, that was a big problem today. I think that's where the defense frustrated me the most is, that defense could not get off the field. Would not get off the field at all on those 3rd down situations. So it's tough. I think it's even more frustrating when it is against a team that doesn't have a ton of stars at Playmaker. So Pistol Pete here with a super chat. Thank you for the support. Says just accept we're poo and rebuilding. No point in being upset with the team. Loomis is still there and won't be fired until Todd Graves buys the team. We're fucked. Look, I think there's a difference, right? Like at the end of the day, when this podcast is over, I'm going to try to enjoy the rest of this NFL Sunday and watch the action. But I think there's a line, right? Like I have no expectations for this Saints team. I think that at this point, I think my frustration is that they are losing a lot of these games that are winnable. Like today was a winnable game. So that's just that's where the frustration stems from, Drake May's turning into another Purdy in my opinion. I think they're 2 different quarterbacks. I think Drake's a far superior athlete, arm, size, just all the measurables that you want from a quarterback. He's kind of had. I watched the Jets in London today and they were putrid. If we lose to them, I rip my eyes out. They are bad. Only team without a win left still in the league. Justin Fields was horrendous today. Like we're arguing about quarterback. That is bad quarterback play. And, I don't know if the Saints lose to them, we'll have a conversation, but that game is so far away. That's a December game. Saints will probably look like a different team. if you're a Jets fan, you hope they look like a different team, because right now I don't know what to say about that. Oscar says Rattler throws fastballs where receivers little time to adjust. Breeze, average receivers look good from throwing passes with touch. I mean, look, if we're talking about Breeze and Rattler, like there's levels to this. I will always say, like, I think as time goes on, I hope to God Drew gets the flowers that he deserves, because besides the fact that the Saints weren't good before him and they haven't been good after him, I think what made Drew so special is outside of, like, all right, prime Jimmy Graham and Michael Thomas in his prime, in that run, Marcus Colston never made a Pro Bowl. And now I think Marcus Colston was the most disrespected wide receiver ever. Like, I think he was so underappreciated. But take Marcus Colston out, right? It was your Devery Hendersons, it was your Robert Meachams, your Lance Moores, who were all good role players, but he always made it work. And then you'd have the guys like Austin Carr. You'd have guys like Keith Kirkwood, who you just throw them in and Drew would be like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to make it work. And look, he's one of the greats. For me personally, I'm biased. I think he's one of the top 3 all time. I think that I'm not going to change my stance because I just love that dude so much. But yeah, there's levels to it. Honestly, I think a lot of young quarterbacks, and Rattler's definitely in this group, they have to learn that you can't just throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball every fucking time. It's got to have some touch. So, I think that that's definitely something you get better at, for sure. Now, will he? I don't know. AKRBX says, trade Olave for what exactly? A day 2 pick. I think they get a 3rd rounder for Olave. I really do. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they could. Shelby says, I feel like Alvin isn't being used like we are used to seeing him. No wheel routes or sneaky screens, which is his bread and butter. Unfortunately, I feel that way. I have felt that way. I felt that way since, the end of the Drew Brees era. Like, I think once Drew Brees' last year, and then everything after that, Alvin was never used the way I think he was at his best. Like, I think back to the 2017 team and him beating Eric Kendricks on a wheel route in the NFC divisional game. Like, Alvin was special in those routes. Giving him a choice route, he was great at. Angle routes, he was great at. We don't see it anymore. It sucks. But I don't want to say I've come to peace with it, because it does aggravate me. But we haven't seen that Alvin for like 4 or 5 years now. Daniel says, people watch the Saints. You bet your ass we do, Daniel. You bet your ass, man. Let's see what else we got. Where is T. Hill? He had that one play that was set up for him, then nothing. I think that's fair. I think, look, Kellen Moore's probably adjusting to it. This is a new situation for him. He has not had a guy like Taysom Hill in terms of being, I don't want to say like a gadget, but kind of is. And I think there's an adjustment period. Obviously, on that goal line play worked well, right? QB power, let it rip there. But it's just one of those situations where I think that that this isn't his player. And I think after this season's over, I'd imagine that if I had to guess, Taysom Hill will play elsewhere. I'm also at peace with that, but we'll see. Maybe it ends up being a little bit better as the season progresses. Saints are better at 3rd and short than they are 3rd and long. Are we saying defensively? Because, yeah, and that makes no fucking sense. Trade Granderson. I think they could trade Granderson. I think it depends on the market, though. Jamie says Saints not, I can't understand this. If you make the team, it's the whole team that need to put Taysom Hill. I don't even know. Jamie, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to need you to, put that one out there again. I'm struggling or, Brandon says, like, people think we're supposed to have 32 Josh Allens in the NFL. Rattler is fine. Olave is a 1B receiver. Kool-Aid is trash. Need an elite edge rusher and elite cornerback. So let's talk about that part, because I actually think that, I think that Josh Allen part is important. So I think, if you look through the course of the NFL, even go 10 years back, right? Like, you'd have your Peyton Mannings, your Drew Breeses, your Tom Brady's, your Aaron Rodgerses. The drop after that is always going to be there, just like it is in the NFL today. Like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, when healthy, although that isn't often, unfortunately. Like, those are the guys. And then there's a huge drop-off after that. And that's just kind of how it is. Like, Justin Herbert's a really good quarterback at times, but we've also seen him struggle. Jaden's a second-year guy, so let's see if he continues it, although I think Jaden could be special. But then you always have, like, your Dak Prescotts, your Staffords, who are good / great at times. Then you have your Jared Goffs. Like, there are levels. If everyone was gunning for Josh Allen's, I don't know, man, it would be a bleak NFL because you'd have like 5 teams that have good quarterbacks and the other 27 teams are just drafting guys every year. So that's why guys like Dak Prescott get $60 million. That's why guys like Brock Purdy get paid. That's why guys like Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield get paid, because you look around the landscape of the league and you go, I have one of the top 15 guys. I don't know if I'm going to be able to draft that special talent like Josh Allen. So let's make it work around that guy. I totally agree with you, Brendan. I couldn't agree more. I think everyone wants to have that special quarterback, and they see those guys with the special traits. And, you guys mentioned Lenore Sellers. I think Lenore Sellers does have special traits, but the odds of him being Anthony Richardson are probably more likely than the odds of him being the next Josh Allen / Lamar Jackson. Like, that's just how the numbers work. There's more draft busts than there are draft hits. And again, doesn't mean that the Saints shouldn't try to get one of those guys. Absolutely. I don't want to make it seem like that at all. You should be aggressive. You should be striving for a franchise quarterback. But franchise quarterback could also look different. I think Jared Goff is a franchise quarterback. But that, for the Lions, he's a franchise quarterback. They have the right team around him. He's good enough for them to win games and win a Super Bowl potentially. And then I look elsewhere, and I see Lamar and Josh Allen compete on like a Sunday night game week 1, and it looks like 2 gods are playing quarterback. So it's different, man. It's just different. Pistol Pete says, need aggressive owner and GM who are not okay with average. I don't disagree with that. Thank you for the support, by the way, Pistol Pete. But I don't disagree with that. I don't know. You guys think we're going to get new ownership soon? I personally don't, man. I really don't. That was the genius regarding Sean Payton. He knew how to utilize his players and get the most out of it. I mean, Sean's an all-time coach for me. That's just, he's a special, special coach. Jacob says the Saints badly need an X receiver. I agree. Holdus L says the Lions are the new Saints, bro. It is what it is. I don't disagree with that at all, man. Add another thing. I like Olave a lot. We need a big wide receiver. That's good to go with him. See, that's the thing though. Like, you're going to have to pay him at some point. So I don't know. It gets really messy, and I don't know. I wouldn't pay him. Wouldn't pay him a ton. Haven't looked yet, but what are the quarterbacks ratings against us? Announcer said May had 150 QBR. I bet Darnold and Mac Jones were similar. I mean, I could go through it. I'd imagine Jackson Dart's QBR wasn't great, but let me pull it up. Since you asked so nicely. Let's get through these games here. I'll pull up the last couple because May was great today, but you could see that May was great. I know Sam Darnold had a crazy QBR against the Saints for sure. 154 for Sam Darnold. So it's about as good as it gets. Jackson Dart was 73.1. And Josh Allen was 113.6. So yeah, not ideal for sure. As the famous philosopher syndrome from the hit film Incredible said, if everyone is super, no one will be. There will never be 32 Josh Allens because the goalposts will just move. Yeah, look, first off, love you pulling out the Incredibles line there. Incredibles 1/2 for movie rankings, by the way, by a wide margin. I think the first one's significantly better. Yeah, look, there's never going to be that many. There's not going to be 7 Josh Allens. Forget about 32 of them. So, I think it's dangerous because, for every Josh Allen, there's like 10 Anthony Richardsons. And for every Lamar Jackson, there's 10 Trey Lances. Like, it's just how it goes. Like, I remember back to 2021? But like, Trevor Lawrence went first. Zach Wilson went second. Trey Lance went third. Justin Fields was top 10, I believe. And Mac Jones was top 15. And let's be honest, one of those guys has been solid, which is Trevor Lawrence. And even then, I think he's been kind of disappointing at times. So hard to find quarterbacks in this league. So when you have one that's decent, you either try to build around them or you keep big name hunting. But you try to get to a happy medium. Like if you could get a Baker Mayfield type quarterback, you roll with Baker. If you get a Dak Prescott, you roll with Dak Prescott. Not everyone's going to be Mahomes or Josh or Lamar in that sense. 3 games in a row where opponents' teams have scored back-to-back touchdowns on the first drive and second drive. Yeah, that's a very good point, Jacob. The Saints defense is bad in first halves, to be quite honest. Now, I mentioned before, second half adjustments from Brandon Staley have been really good. But, man, they got to get better. They got to get better, At that first half defense, you're putting yourself behind the sticks every single time. Rattler has been good enough for us to win. We just lack talent. I don't disagree with that. Like, here's my argument, right? Like, if I stuck Rattler on a team that is competing right now, would they be able to win games? And I kind of think they would be. The Saints aren't good enough, right? There's not a lot of talent out there. Decent QBs can win a Super Bowl. Look at Jalen Hurts. Fuck yeah, man. By the way, because we're winding down here, we got maybe a couple more comments, and then I'm going to bounce here. You know, Drew Brees got a lot of shit for saying, A, Jalen Hurts wasn't a top 5 quarterback, and B, for saying that the Eagles' offense is boring as shit. Well, since then, they've lost back-to-back games, and I'm sorry, if you watch Jalen Hurts and you think he's an elite quarterback, I just don't think you're watching the right football. I don't think Jalen Hurts is as bad as some people say. I think some people take it a little too fucking far, but no way in hell is that man an elite quarterback. No way in hell. And shocker, Drew Brees is a ball knower. Staley isn't good either. You know your cornerback's going to cook. Play deep, let them run, and take underneath stuff. You know, yes, no. I do agree. Staley's got his flaws. I thought second half defense was much better. It's just tough. Like, you're in a bind. Your pass rush doesn't get home, and your secondary isn't good enough to cover. So I guess the question is, like, well, what the fuck do you end up doing? And I don't know. Brendan says, I'm not trading Olave. You just need an X receiver. I understand that, Brendan. I respect that. I would trade Olave personally, but I understand that. But I would trade Olave. Pistol Pete with Super Chat says, bro, put Rattler on the 49ers and they be undefeated. Well, see, that first off, again, thank you for the support. That's another good comment. Like, if I were to swap Mac Jones and Spencer Rattler, I'm sorry. I think that the Niners would still win the same games they won with Mac Jones that they would with Spencer Rattler. That's just me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just where I'm at. And again, doesn't mean that I think Rattler is going to be a good quarterback. My whole argument is, like, if you're going to bring up the wins and losses, Mac Jones is 3-0 this year. Do I really think Mac Jones is the reason they're winning those games? No. On the other hand, the Saints are 1-5. Do I think Rattler's the reason that they've lost 5 games? Also, no. So there's, like, their happy medium. Like, no, he's not a Drake May, who we saw today. There's a gap between Drake May and Spencer Rattler, of course. There is. You know? But I think that using the win-loss thing for every quarterback, and that's how you grade them, I think that's a very, very slippery slope to go down. Rattler's good, 20-20. Red zone is the problem. You're not wrong about that. And look, the concerning thing is whether or not it's him or it's the offense, because I remember when the Saints signed Derek Carr, Raiders fans were like, yo, he sucks in the red zone. And I was like, all right, let's see, new team. Derek Carr sucked in the red zone. So it is possible that he's just a bad red zone quarterback. We're going to have to see. I think we're 6 games into this Kellen Moore era. It's got to turn around. If they keep settling for field goals, it's going to be tough. D23 says, I love how Breeze has riled up the Eagles fan base. I love that too, man. Always good to see those dudes get riled up. As much as we want to love Olave, we can't. I mean, look, I still love the dude, but I think trading Olave is probably best for both parties. You don't have to sign him to a huge extension. You let him go. He could shine elsewhere, which is awesome. I want the best for Olave as a player. I mean, because he's due a new contract, so I hope he balls out and gets his money. I just don't think the Saints should do it, you know? And this is where I'm at with him. Olave's good, not great. We need him to be great. Trade him with someone who needs a Robin, not a Batman. I think that's a totally perfect point. You know, I think it's totally fair. Shock Drew Brees, an all-time quarterback, and tell if someone else is an all-time quarterback. I think that's fair. Is there a scenario where we keep Olave and get an X wide receiver 1? My guess is no. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that, guys. But just my guess in the moment, I think it's very hard to get both done. So my thought at this time is no. I think the Saints will probably have to settle for, you know, either just trading him or keeping him and extending him and kind of building around. But I think that can get pretty rough if that's what they end up doing. Olave's just a letdown at this point. Look, I don't think he is necessarily a letdown. I just don't think he is a top guy at that wide receiver spot. So we'll see. Time to start Tyler Shuck. Are we sure? I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't personally think it's time to start him, but maybe I'm wrong. Just frustrated with the team. I understand it's a rebuilding year, but a lot of these losses should have been wins. Yeah, I think that's fair. I have a bad feeling we're going to pay him the Wilson contract, Garrett Wilson contract, which is very scary. I don't think they will, but I don't know. Look, a lot of insiders are mentioning him near the trade deadline. So I think that's going to happen. I think he's going to get moved, but I'm also naive at times, so maybe I'm wrong. Jedi says, pretty irritating to see Igbuka immediately outperforming all our receivers. It is, but like the situation's also great. Tampa Bay's just a better offense. They got a better quarterback. And not right now, because Igbuka's doing it with the vets injured, which just makes it even more insane. But, when Igbuka has that full array around him, who are you picking as a defensive coordinator to stop? Because you're going to have probably Godwin operating in the slot a lot. Obviously, Mike's going to be on the outside when Mike Evans comes back from his hammy. And Igbuka has just been tremendous. So, I get it. He's been great. He's also going to have a better support system around, but he's been excellent. Like, if you're telling me who's been better, Igbuka or Olave, it's definitely been Igbuka. There's no question about it. Annoying, the Bucs have a top 5 GM. They do. They hit on a lot of fucking picks, man. And I thought after the Tom Brady era ended, I thought the Bucs were just going to go into like the irrelevant, obsolete area of NFL teams, and it hasn't, man. It hasn't. So anyway, guys, let's wrap this thing up. We've been doing this for over an hour. Saints lose. Obviously not great. Defense was horrible in the first half. The offense was horrible in the second half. And Saints got to figure it out. We've got the Bears next week. We'll obviously have our Monday pod. We'll also have our playback. So we'll see what went wrong for this team. And we'll see if they can kind of turn things around and get ready for a tough Chicago team that could be over 500, depending on how their Monday night game goes. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for all your comments, your super chats, the thoughts, the likes. You guys are the absolute best. So thank you for tuning in. And we'll be back later this week on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.